afternoon, everyone. I'm Lori with Behavior Education at Spirit Keeper Equine Sanctuary. Today is Saturday, February 20th, 2021, and it has been 8 days since Vashti, our false water cobra's training session in her new setup. And when I say new setup, she's in a terrarium now that is 36 inches wide by 24 inches deep by 18 inches high. That should suit her for a while. So she is going to get quite large, so it won't be her permanent living space, but it should suffice her maybe even for this next year, depending on how quickly she grows. Now, Vashti came from West Liberty University, and Dr. Zach Loafman is a PhD professor there who supervises grad students. And one of his grad students, Michelle, is doing her graduate thesis on training false water cobras and snake behavior. It's a really interesting project. I've been coaching her as she trains the false water cobras. And Vashti was sent here so that I could have a false water cobra here to work with in order to better advise Michelle. And I'm so glad that they sent me one because it's such a unique species. I truly feel that I couldn't have advised her as well as I am if I didn't have a specimen here to work with. And just a little information about Vashti. She was hatched on June 8th, 2020. And they hatched about 100 baby false water cobras at West Liberty University last year. And Vashti was the smallest. So when they sent her to me, they said she was the runt, and not just of her clutch, but she was literally the smallest false water cobra of all of the false water cobras that they hatched out in 2020. And she was also a slow starter to eat. So they had some challenges and some difficulty in the beginning getting her to eat. So with all of that said, I don't actually know how large to expect her to get, but she may stay smaller than some of the other false water cobras that you may have seen. And they can get like 8 to 10 feet. So they're usually quite a large snake. So Vashti arrived here in November once she was established feeding, and she had not had any prior training, although she did observe her clutch mate being trained. And that was the first clutch that Michelle worked with when she was figuring out how to train snakes, and she didn't really know what she was doing yet. And so there was a lot of trial and error going on. And as we all do when we first get started in training any animal, and sometimes with a new animal or a new species, we make some mistakes and we learn from those. And by the time we get to the last group of animals we're training, we have everything smoothed out and we have a plan in place and a system, and everything goes smoothly. So Vashti watched her clutch mates being trained, and when she arrived here, her behavior was erratic. And I say erratic because sometimes she would be calm when she was engaged in the training, and sometimes she would be a complete spaz. And you have seen that in some of the videos. My hope now that she is in a terrarium that she should be in for quite a while, at least 6 months to a year, and she's in a location in our facility that's stable. And she is also near some snakes who are my absolute best learners. So she is housed now next to my inland carpet pythons. And I do not give that species enough credit for their intelligence and their ability to learn, and to learn quickly, and for their ability to generalize behaviors in all sorts of different environments. I've probably challenged my inland carpet pythons with more new behaviors in more new environments than any other snake here, and I really need to highlight them more. But Vashti is housed now next to my inland carpet pythons, and all of my inland carpet pythons were produced by Justin Julander. I have 3 clutch mates, 2 females and a male, and then I have a sibling of theirs that's older, so he has the same parents, but he's a couple of years older than them. And they're just my best learners. They're excellent. So Vashti, prior to that first session where she successfully shifted from her primary habitat into what is now going to be our permanent shift tub for her. It's the blue tub with the front opening and the top opening. It worked very well for her, and we're going to stick with that, working with her. So now we have a system that we're going to stick with Vashti, so she'll have some routine, and I think that's going to help her out a lot. But last week, or almost 2 weeks ago, she was out watching me train the inland carpet pythons. So when I was working with them and training them on stationing and shifting, she was out of hiding and at the front of her enclosure watching. So when I went to train Vashti 8 days ago, I decided to train her with the same target I was using for the inland carpet pythons, just out of curiosity. Now, I have no way to know if snakes are successful observational learners or not. I can't say that they're not, but I also can't say that they are. It wouldn't surprise me if they can learn very well from observational learning, and that means that they watch another animal do something and then they can repeat that behavior. There has been a study in lizards that shows that they can learn from observational learning. In the study, one lizard was taught a behavior to open a door, and the other lizards in the group watched that one do it, and they were all able to then do it. And the control group, who didn't watch the behavior and were not taught the behavior, were unable to open the door. Since observational learning is possible in lizards, snakes and lizards are both squamates, so they're very closely related. I wouldn't be surprised if snakes couldn't learn through observational learning. So after having watched the inland carpet pythons doing their training sessions, I worked with Vashti, and that was really the best shifting behavior I've ever gotten from her, and that was the video that I posted last week, where I talked about cooperative shifting and how important it is, and she shifted into a travel bin or a holding container, and then she successfully shifted back. Now, true to Vashti, she was still a little bit hyper during that process. Well, today it's been 8 days, and she was showing me some behavior that indicated it was time to feed her again. And what I look for in her is, has she eliminated? And she did. She eliminated in her water like she always does. So it's always necessary for me to clean her water, usually around feeding time, and that's one of the reasons it's great to be able to shift her out of her primary habitat to feed her, so that I can do some cleaning while she's out. So she had eliminated, she had produced feces and urates, and she was just starting to be more active around her habitat, come out and watch me more. And again, I trained the inland carpet pythons last night. I trained them on shifting and on stationing right in front of Vashti's enclosure. And so then today I worked with Vashti, and she did an excellent shifting behavior. She was much calmer this time. She wasn't spazzy. She didn't flip out. She shifted very calmly out of hiding, out of her primary habitat, and into the shift tub. And then also what I really liked about this session, I did reinforce her once she was in the shift tub with just some free food. So I didn't target her once she was in the shift tub. I just put an extra small quail in there and a hopper mouse in there for her to find in the shift tub and to eat. Because we want her to associate that container with pleasurable things, so that it's not something she's afraid of, and it's something that she willingly goes into. And I really liked today that she found her extra food in there, and then when I had cleaned her enclosure and her water and was ready to shift her back, she was just quietly and calmly sitting in the shift tub. I opened the door and she didn't really want out. She was just sitting in there, no indicators of stress. She was sitting there very relaxed and comfortable and quietly tongue flicking. And she actually sat there with the door open for a while before she decided to shift back into her habitat. Now, I chose to not prompt her to shift back and not try to entice her to shift back with a lot of movement of the target or a lot of motion, because she's an individual that I'm actually trying to calm her behavior down. I'm not trying to initiate her or stimulate her to be more active and more hyper. I actually get very reserved and very calm around her because I want her behavior to calm down. Whereas some of the snakes, I move a lot, I prompt a lot with movement of the target, and some of the individuals I work with need that in order to keep them engaged with the activity, or they lose interest quickly and they go their own way. But with Vashti, I do the opposite. With Vashti, I get very calm. I try to use very little movement. And so I didn't want to try to use movement to prompt her to shift back into her enclosure. And so I just set her final food reinforcer on a blue plate that's the same color as the blue target, and I put it inside her enclosure. And then I set the target disc up next to that, and I left the shift door open and her enclosure door open, and I just sat there and watched her. And after a few minutes, she started sticking her head out and tongue flicking. And then after a few more minutes, she shifted herself back into her habitat, and she pretty calmly did that. And she very calmly took the food reinforcer. And then once she was eating and she went back into her hide, very calmly I might add, I was able to remove all of the training equipment from the habitat, put her fake foliage back in, close the doors, and we had another extremely successful training session. Now, it could just be because she's in an established location now, in an established habitat, and we've got established equipment that we're using. It could be that she's getting older, more used to me, more used to being here, and just naturally becoming calmer. It also could be some observational learning going on because she's watching our 4 inland carpet pythons being trained, and they're the best possible examples of snakes that she could learn from if she was going to learn from any snakes being trained. So it could be that it's a combination of some observational learning. She's more comfortable here, and as she gets older and is more comfortable here, she's getting calmer. So enjoy this video. I know that was a super long introduction, but I really feel like she deserved some history to be told. That the accomplishments she is making, not only as an individual, as Vashti, but also as the species Hydrodynastes gigas, are really significant accomplishments. And Michelle at West Liberty University is working with a core group of 7 false water cobras, but then she's working with 20 or 30 others periodically. And she's doing a fantastic job with them, and some of them are making great strides in their training as well. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you found this beneficial. Remember that Hydrogenastes gigas, according to Dr. Zach Loafman, are encounter feeders. They don't have heat-sensing pits, and they don't hunt through chemoreception. They hunt visually, and when they see something moving, they rush up to it and encounter it, and they hit it with their nose, or they might even bite onto it with their mouth, and then they decide whether it's food or not. Or they race up to something and hit it with their nose and then start tongue flicking and decide if it's food or not. So for Vashti and other false water cobras to be able to calm their feeding response in the way that you saw during this video is a phenomenal accomplishment. And I'm very, very proud of her, because it's gonna make her ease of care and ease of management safer for me, and it's gonna make for a much smoother relationship between her and I over the years as she lives here. If you're interested in undergraduate or graduate zoo science programs, please contact West Liberty University for more information. And if you're interested in inland carpet pythons, contact Justin Julander at Australian Addiction Reptiles.com. Everybody, please remember, always be kind and love your animals.